So, why are people so scared of... Smart cities being used to shape behavior in the direction of party interests, severe religious persecution, rewriting history, crackdown in Hong Kong, a state with seemingly no natural aversion to totalitarianism. Orwell is banned in China. Except wait, he's not. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Chinese censors are not stupid, and they act judiciously. The truth is, you can buy a copy of 1984 almost anywhere in China. You wouldn't think so, would you? Orwell's classic looms large in our literature as an anti-manifesto, a clear expression of what it is that we as a democracy don't want to be. But in China, it's just a book, because treating it as anything more runs the risk of giving it power. Who cares? It's only the elites who read foreign books anyway. So yeah, you can read it. Knock yourself out. You just can't talk about it on the internet. Except you can! Okay, you just can't talk about it as a critique of the Chinese state or as a wake-up call to the proletariat or as anything touching upon criticism of Chinese society. No, you can't do that. This is because as soon as you introduce the idea that people might be dissatisfied with the culture that they inhabit, you run the risk of creating disharmony. And if there's one idea that's like kryptonite to the Chinese government, it's the idea of a disharmonious China. Very important. This is why China leans unapologetically towards totalitarianism and information control in a way that we ourselves might find sinister, even though arguably we have our own versions of it. So why is China like this? Where does it come from, this obsession with ideological fidelity to the state? In 1949, after an interminable age of civil war and foreign invasion, the communists, having defeated the invading Japanese, came to power. Their leader was Chairman Mao Zedong, and he was determined to bring unity to his country, even if it meant having to impose it by force. The giant wave of support that inaugurated the People's Republic of China saw this as a call to a greater destiny. The humiliation was over, and now China would assume a permanent place on the world stage as a perfect and everlasting socialist utopia. This couldn't be achieved, not in Mao's lifetime, without a system that was able to control political dissent, and no time was wasted in putting that system together. It was very effective. Anyone who wasn't seen to be struggling against capitalism risked a range of punishments from mere public humiliation and loss of livelihood to prison, torture, and very often execution. In the end, there was so little dissent that even Mao himself began to think, bored now. Come on you kids, how about some pushback? Bring it! So he set up a group of intellectuals and students, the so-called 100 Flowers. They were designed to prevent the revolution from becoming intellectually and artistically sterile. Yay, said the 100 Flowers, and indeed they did bring it, submitting their ideas to local postboxes for review by party officials. Later though, perhaps under pressure from other party members, Mao decided that the Flowers were in fact capitalist insurgents. There was a complete reversal. The 100 Flowers were now labelled traitors, and the public were urged to struggle with them. Not only did Mao renege on his invitation to critics, he also pretended never to have extended the invitation in the first place. It didn't matter what you were told yesterday. It only mattered that you and the state were of the same mind. And of course, since this was government by the people, and according to party ideology, the people and the state are one thing, indivisible. The revolution could never come quick enough for Mao. During the Great Leap Forward from 1958 to 1962, which was designed to transform China into one industrial unit, the state took control of agriculture. The result was a catastrophic famine. Mao blamed this failure on right-wing elements, and so called forth the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, in which the youth were invited to engage in violent struggle against the capitalist enemies of the state. This, it was thought, would be the big one, the final removal of traditional thought and of capitalist infection. The result was a worsening of China's already bruised economy, lasting damage to traditional culture, and a death toll from violence that is still unknown today, but that some estimates put at around 20 million. It's worth reminding ourselves that all this happened in the 60s and 70s. Mao Zedong died in September 1976. Soon after, although not without struggle, the Cultural Revolution was, wouldn't you know it, brutally suppressed. You see a pattern here. Mao was succeeded by Deng Xiaoping, who began to offer reforms. He reintroduced private ownership. By liberalizing the economy and presenting a more cooperative front to foreign powers, China began to see a return to wealth, creativity, and a surge in successful industry. In keeping with their tradition of galvanizing the people, there were to be no half measures. The age of Made in China was dawning. All of which gives rise to their current economic entanglement with the West. To this day, though, China won't touch real democracy with a barge pole, and its current record on human rights is a matter of international concern. In 2018, the current leader, Xi Jinping, removed any term limit on presidency and expanded the central role of the Communist Party. So don't expect to see any change on that front this side of the 22nd century. China's recent history, as well as that of the former Soviet Union, contribute to our not unfounded aversion to state communism in the West. Looking at China's power today, it may well be the case that we have to take a critical look at how far China wishes to extend its influence, and to what end. Vigilance is a good idea, but we desperately have to avoid witch hunting. Because the truth is that communism, like capitalism, is pretty much here to stay. And although I may not be a fan, I recognize that we're going to have to credit the movement with its fair share of positive influence. Communist ideas can function harmoniously within a capitalist framework. They can contribute. A bit of communism here and there can make things fairer. The horrors of Mao's China, some of which unfortunately do continue today, are less an illustration of any inherent awfulness packed into the basics of Marxism and Leninism, and more of an illustration of the clear and present catastrophe packed into the idea of sweeping, short-term political revolution. Revolution of this type is never good. And if history hasn't made this abundantly clear by now, then we can with full qualification be described as stupid, and probably deserving of catastrophe. Mao, like a child, wanted it all done today. Cost be damned. There's nothing more dangerous than a powerful child. Don't be like Mao. Be an adult. See you next week.